Welcome to another edition of Octagons, Circles, and Squares, an NBC Sports podcast covering the cage, the mat, and the ring. I'm your host, Steven D'Agostino, and today we are talking UFC 314, a huge card in South Florida, and what better way to break down the action to have someone from the co-main event join us. That is one Michael Chandler hopping on the show. He talks his big fight with Paddy Pimblett, plus breaking down the rest of that stacked division. We also are joined by our betting analyst, Brad Thomas, who will be in the seats in Miami, give us some of his best bets for the card to help you win some money. All that coming your way and more. But first, free NBC Sports Now channel is your home for NFL Draft Month with more than 100 hours of draft programming throughout April. Daily draft coverage includes PFT Live, The Dan Patrick Show, Chris Sims Unbuttoned, and Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Plus, tune in for NFL Draft ranking specials with Connor Rogers and updated mock drafts premiering every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. For more information, go to nbcsports.com/now. Joined now by Michael Chandler as we look ahead to UFC 314 in South Florida. Michael, thanks for hopping on with us, man. We got to go back to 2011, I believe, since your last fight in the Sunshine State when you beat Eddie Alvarez to claim that Bellator belt. That's a throwback fight there for some of our older fight fans. How much have you grown since then? What's changed? What's Michael Chandler now in South Florida for 314?
Dude, hey, great vault pick from back in 2011, because I actually was thinking about that. I was like, I haven't fought in Florida since, the Hard Rock against Eddie Alvarez for the world title, man, 2011. And what's really cool, to start to answer your question, what's really cool is I had fight of the year. Everybody voted fight of the year, Chandler versus Alvarez, 2011. And then a decade later, every single person in the MMA world said the fight of the year was Chandler versus Gaethje 2021. So I had fight of the year awards in 2011 and 2021, a decade apart, which is really cool. So that kind of speaks to your question of how are things going, man. I am truly blessed. I am truly, truly happy with what I get to do, who I get to do it with, who I get to do it for. And this weekend next weekend in Miami, man, I'm excited to go out there and lay it all on the line again. And you're going to get exactly what you get every single time I step into the octagon. My full self on display for all the world to see. Come what may. Win, lose, or draw. Get my hand raised or I don't. I get finished or I finish somebody. Either way, you're going to be on the edge of your seat. You're going to be happy you bought the pay-per-view. And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to lay it all on the line.
Let's talk about that fight coming up on hand against Paddy Pimblett. The one thing I think is very curious to me, and I try to be impartial as possible, but these comments that Paddy's ground game is so vicious that's something that you have to be concerned about. I think Michael Bisping might even said that if he takes your back, it's going to be a big problem, which I laugh about because I was at MSG watching you walk around the cage with probably the best submission artist of all time as a backpack, and you're smiling, which is totally fine. What's going on with this narrative that Paddy's ground game is going to be kind of a bane for you next week?
Not probably the best submission artist, but the most decorated submission artist. The most submissions in UFC history does Charles Oliveira have. And with that being said, there's always a danger. There's always a danger we can get knocked out. There's always a danger we can get caught in a submission. Paddy loves his ground game, mainly because it's a lot more solid than his striking game. And he's not going to want to stand and bang with me, I'll tell you that much. So it's definitely something I got to be worried about or at least cognizant of. But, man, I train with Gilbert Burns, Herbert Burns. I train with 25 black belts. You know, as you saw, as you said, your brother trains at Kill Cliff. We have we have the spoils of riches when it comes to black belts and great grapplers. I got Dagestani wrestlers, Sambo submission artists. I got BJJ black belts. I've got all the tools at my disposal to be able to train for Paddy Pimblett's ground game. Now, with that being said, we got to be smart. We got to have a game plan. We got to not get caught in anything dumb because that's what can happen in there inside the fight, inside of a fight. But I'm not really worried about it. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to let the fight progress. And I think my pressure is going to be too much. My hands are going to be too heavy. My speed is going to be too much. And he'll know from the first exchange, he's not stepping in the octagon with Bobby Green or, some of these other guys that he has fought. And it's going to be fun, man.
Going back to that Charles fight at MSG, I think you were talking with Hilwani a few weeks ago, and you had said, you made a comment that was maybe the most disappointed you've been coming off of a fight. I'd love to hear you kind of expound on that a little bit more. And then, how did you bounce back from that mentally heading into 314?
One of I think the crash, right? Like the way down after the loss was only because I was up so high, man. I believed in myself. I believed in my calling. I believed in the story that was being, you know, told and the masterpiece that was being painted. I journaled every single day about how I was going to win that fight. And I was so built up. I could touch it. I could feel it. I could taste it. I could smell it, the win, right? And then the title shot and the path that was going to be laid out in front of me. And then I lost, and the whole world came crumbling down. And, I shed some tears, and it was my body hurt and my brain hurt. But most of all, my heart hurt because, it's just a sport. It doesn't mean a thing really in the grand scheme of things, man. But when you pour everything that you have, your full self into something, and you get disappointed, it hurts. But with that being said, I also still believe that I have UFC gold in my future, and it just wasn't going to happen after the Charles Oliveira fight. I still believe I have a lot of tread left on the tires. And this fight in particular, you're fighting Gaethje, you're fighting Poirier, you're fighting Oliveira, you're fighting these top guys, the Mount Rushmore of the UFC lightweight division. There's a certain sense of, hey, go out there, give it your best, go out and beat this guy. But then when you get an opportunity to have your back your back up against the corner, and you only have one way to go, and there's a lot riding on it, and there's a lot of risk fighting a guy like Paddy Pimblett, who's not ranked as high as me. There's an even bigger fire burning right now, and it's a different type of fire, but it's a huge burning fire. So I'm excited to go out there, plant my flag, stake my claim as one of the best lightweights in the world, prove that I still have title contention in my future, and Paddy's got to be the guy who becomes the victim of that. But April 12th, we go out there, fireworks once again.
You mentioned during that answer that you always lay it out on the line. If you look at your last 6 fights, and I know it's not the record you want, but we're talking performance of the night, title fight, fight of the night, performance of the night, fight of the night, fight of the night. I mean, it's like a highlight reel every time you're in there. How do you mentally, like when you step in, what is different for you versus other fighters that we're seeing these kind of highlight level performances night in and night out?
That's a really tough question to answer without putting myself up on a pedestal and making it look like I am better than anybody. But I do truly believe, how like you've heard it since you were a kid, like we only use like 5% of our brain, or we've heard these things like we don't reach our full potential. I truly believe that not just fighters, but every human being is operating underneath their full potential. And I think in fighting, it's no different. I think sometimes guys and gals go in there and they point fight and they fight not to lose instead of fight to win. I legitimately go in there and I fight to win as if I'm fighting to the death. I go in there balls to the wall, and I've never once paced myself in anything in life. Since I started wrestling in 2000 when I was 14 years old, I never ever paced myself. If I had the opportunity to start a practice knowing I was out of shape, and I would pace myself in order to make it all the way to the end, or go 100% and die halfway through and have to sit out the rest of practice, I'm choosing the latter. I'm going to go as hard as I can until I can't stand anymore, until I don't have any breath left, until I don't have any energy left. And that's what I take into every practice, every opportunity, every fight. And it's lost me some fights. I get it. Is it the smartest way of doing things? No. Could I have better fight IQ? Yes. Have I lost some people some money who bet on me? I don't care, but yes, I have, right? It's part of it. So I just think win, lose, or draw, man, I'm giving you 100% of myself. I'm giving you 100% of my human being. And people can feel that. And that's why people love to watch me fight. And that's also why people hate on me. It's a beautiful double-edged sword, right? Like a lot of people love it, and a lot of people are like, dude, hey, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with how much you actually throw yourself into the fire, because I'm a little bit insecure and a little bit jealous of the fact that you're able to do that. So if I can unlock that in people slowly but surely, while I take a little bit of criticism, so be it. But I just think that's what it is, man. Most people don't throw 100% of themselves out there when that cage door locks. Not just in that arena, but every arena in life.
For those us that like grew up in wrestling, watching you fight reminds me of like your old wrestling coach that tells you like win the position, win the period, wrestle at the edge of the mat, because it's like no matter where you are on the cards, it just feels like in the Oliveira fight was a perfect example of that. It's like you're smiling out there. It's like every round it's a mini kind of match. So I do appreciate watching you fight in that regard for sure.
Thank you, man. Well, yeah, and truthfully, I mean, I can attest a lot of who I am and how I operate, not just as a fighter, but as an entrepreneur, a father, a husband. Like, wrestling is the greatest sport ever created. It's way better than mixed martial arts. Yeah. Like it has taught me to be the man that I am. I'm actually writing a book right now, and I actually just got done with like almost the first draft of the manuscript, and we got to go in and change some things, man. But a good chunk of the book is about my wrestling experience of being a walk-on at the University of Missouri, being the lowest guy on the totem pole, no scholarship, coach not looking in my direction at all, barely even knowing who I am, right? And that walk-on mentality, plus the hardest, adding on top of that, the hardest, most grinding sport that you could ever be a part of, man. It's taught me so much, and I've made a really great living in the sport of mixed martial arts because of who I was for the 10 years prior to that as a wrestler, and more specifically at Northwest High School and at Mizzou. So I'm excited for people to read the book when it does come out, hopefully later this year, because not if you're just not if you're an athlete, but if you're just someone trying to become the best version of yourself, no matter where you start, you can get to the top eventually.
I could talk to you about wrestling all day. So I know you're tight on time, but last question here and I'll let you go. So 155 is insane right now. It's stacked. It's hard for me to remember a division that's had this much tumultuousness and big names, and you're like right in that mix there. The other thing too, it's like you're a Renaissance man. You're very good at like articulate, like look at your setup right now. You got a future in media for sure if you want it. Also the best guy at cutting promos, like for sure. So first part of this question, what is the analysis of having the best promo after a fight? Like what are the in and outs? And can you give us a hint of anyone at 155 you're calling out next Saturday if you get your hand raised?
It's a great question. It's definitely something that you have to kind of think about. Like, if you want to be interesting, you have to be interested. You have to be interested in the full picture, right? So I know the full picture of the lightweight division. I know what's probably going to happen. I know the matchups that are happening. I know what's happening in the weight class below me and the weight class above me. And I know guys in my weight class who are thinking about changing weight classes, right? So like, I think you have to know who you want to call out. There's got to be an order. There's got to be different weights associated with them. Like what's the most obvious call out, and what's the fight that most likely makes sense, not just to you and the opponent, but to the UFC. And if you got to sprinkle in Connor's name a little bit in there just to tick a couple of people off and make them make fun of me a little bit, we'll probably do that as well. But man, like you said, I think Islam's moving up to 170 at some point. So I think his time in the lightweight division is very short. And you got Ilya coming up from 145. Both of those names are on that list. Max Holloway for the BMF belt. Chandler versus Gaethje, fight of the year 2021, a rematch of that for a number one contender spot. Those are definitely some names I'm looking at, and I'll do it in a very, very entertaining, very loud, very butt on the edge of your seat, make your heart pumping type of way, and people are going to love it. And but first, we got to take care of business and separate Paddy Pimblett from consciousness.
Our UFC 314 preview continues, and there's no better way to carry it on than ask someone who's going to be there in the seats, live blogging, my friend Brad Thomas, who's always joining us every episode. Brad, thanks for hopping on for this special edition, since, again, you'll be there. What are some overarching thoughts about Miami's card coming up here?
It is kind of a shame that Ilia Topuria, vacated his title, because if he would have fought at this event, I thought it would have been an absolute world-class card. I kind of was at first glance, right? Before I really started diving deep in it, I was a little disappointed because the last Miami card was an absolute banger. But the more you dig into this card, the more you think about the nuances, the subtle nuances, like could this be the major fight for Paddy Pimblett? We get a title fight at the top with two guys, Volkanovski desperately trying to get back to glory and Lopes trying to etch his name in history. There's so many subtle nuances to this card where I think it's going to be fantastic. Plus, there's a lot of guys here with serious knockout power on this card. So I think we're going to get some great finishes as well.
Yeah, it's actually, like you said, a pretty deep card. And one of those fights I know you want to talk about is the Pitbull Yair Rodríguez fight. This is Pitbull's first fight in the UFC after a long, respected career in Bellator. Who do you like in this scrap in the undercard?
So if odds didn't matter, right? Like if this wasn't a betting channel and we only cared about who's going to win, who has the advantages, I'd probably go with Yair, right? He's got the massive reach advantage. Reach advantage is almost freaking 6 inches, right? Height advantage, really, really good fighter, but they're kind of disrespecting Pitbull. I think they're treating Pitbull as if he's just this young up-and-comer with no serious fights under his belt. This guy's got legitimate knockout power. He's a ferocious competitor with a great lineage in talented fighters that he's beat. We have to also remember, Yair's coming off 2 pretty embarrassing losses. And I don't want to call Volkanovski embarrassing, right? Like you fight with Volk and you go to war, you might get knocked out, but that is still a knockout, right? And then getting submitted by Brian Ortega. How can this guy really be? He opened around -210, -200, still around the -170 price. How can I realistically say that I want to put money on Yair in this situation given this price? I'm going to be on Pitbull to upset around +160, +170. If you find a better line, great. I just think that his fighting pedigree is high enough. He's getting disrespected in the odds, and he has that knockout power to kind of get the job done here.
Speaking of former Bellator standouts, someone that's had some beef historically with Pitbull, or the Pitbull family rather, is Michael Chandler, who finds himself on this card as well. It's a bit of a home game for Chandler. He's fighting at Kill Clip down there in South Florida. Last time he fought in Miami was when he beat Eddie Alvarez on that Bellator card. So he has some fond memories of South Florida, of SoFlo. Who do you like in this fight against him and Paddy Pimblett?
This actually might be the most intriguing fight on the card, right? We have a 39-year-old Chandler versus the up-and-coming, the media darling in Paddy Pimblett. And I just think that this is another situation where the odds don't really reflect the pedigree. Paddy Pimblett, yes, he can go out there and win. He has the age advantage, certainly. But let's not forget, like, sure, Michael Chandler's lost, 4 of his last 5 fights, but these were phenomenal fighters. He fought Oliveira twice. He lost to Poirier. He lost to Gaethje. Like, he's not losing to some of the lesser known names. It's always scary to kind of want to back a guy who hasn't seen a ton of success. But this is a massive jump up in class for Paddy Pimblett. Pimblett's like last 2 fights, Tony Ferguson and King Green, those are kind of like the layup fights in the UFC. And Dana White does a really good job of protecting his up-and-coming fighters where he puts them in really good situations. Now he's being thrown to the wolves. It'll be constant pace and constant chaos with Michael Chandler. He's a guy who's a dog in the ring. I just think getting a really nice plus money price on him, I think I bet around +140, +135 on him. I think that's just something you have to at least consider. I've heard the nonsense swirling around the media. What if Paddy Pimblett takes Chandler's back? He's going to choke him out. Listen, Oliveira didn't choke him out by taking his back and being in that fight for forever with a guy who's one of the best submission artists in the entire UFC. Now we expect Paddy Pimblett to do that. And I want to add one more thing, too, about this Pimblett fight where it's just people feel like this is a given. For Paddy Pimblett to even take his back, he's going to have to close the distance. Chandler is complete chaos, a guy who goes to war every time he steps in that ring. It's easier said than done. I'm going with Michael Chandler, and I know it's scary taking 2 mid-sized dogs on this card, but I'm just not buying it, right? I'm going to have to see it before I believe it. And Paddy Pimblett certainly could win this fight, but it's just a price I'm not comfortable taking.
Yeah, it is pretty head scratching to me as well with this plus money on Chandler, right? And you kind of mentioned the narrative that if he takes his back, it's over, he's in trouble. Yeah. I mean, I was at MSG at that fight watching Michael Chandler walk around with the greatest submission artist in the UFC history on his back, smiling, like doing backflips, like slamming him on the ground. And I'm supposed to believe that Michael Chandler is concerned about that. And he said as much as well. The plus money is very odd. I'll be tailing you on that. I don't care about the recent record because, like you said, every single one of these losses, it's either been a title fight, performance of the night, or fight of the night. Chandler brings it every single night. He's out there a day in and day out. And yeah, this is a test Paddy hasn't seen yet. So I like the plus money. How about the main event, Brad? We got Volk versus Lopes. Lopes has looked very good, including when we were at that Sphere card a few months back. Tell us what you think and what your favorite picks are for this scrap.
This is probably the most dangerous fight in terms of picking a winner, right? I thought about this for a little bit. Every great champion goes through this career arc, or at least most, where they are a great champion with amazing title defenses. They get pieced up. The fear factor is gone. No one fears them anymore. And then they give it one more try or go after the belt again, try to make another run, and then they just can't do it, right? Now we have to ask ourselves, is that the situation? Is that the case for Volkanovski, right? You got knocked out by Islam, then followed up with a pretty bad knockout against Topuria. Topuria has a fantastic knockout power, right? Not saying Lopes doesn't have that. So it is a big difference in fight, and which makes sense why Volkanovski is favored. Lopes has nothing to lose in this fight. But I just think about a 5-round title fight with one of the smartest fight IQ guys to don the featherweight belt. I have to go with Volkanovski, right? I just have to. And like I said, this is another situation I can be wrong. The price isn't great, but I just feel like Volkanovski gets his one last chance. As long as he doesn't get caught, as long as he doesn't get pieced up, which Diego Lopes is a fantastic striker, I think Volkanovski can fight IQ his way to another title. If not, it's going to be the rise and the reign of Diego Lopes, and I think he'll hold the belt for a significant amount of time.
Yeah, it's so hard, right? Because we talk about a lot about, when is the precipice, when's the cliff on some of these iconic fighters? And usually it's shortly after a really bad knockout, people get a little punch drunk, and then you start seeing the decline. We saw that with Topuria. We saw that with Islam. Those knockouts take a toll on you, and then it becomes a question of when are you selling your Volk stock? I love watching Volkanovski fight. It's so hard for me to even possibly think about selling Volk stock. I think I got to go with Volk too. This is a huge test for Lopes. Yeah, he had the Ortega fight. Dan Ige stepped up. And I think actually, even though Lopes won that fight, it didn't look great for Lopes. That was a decision fight. Someone that rolled off the couch, took the fight. Lopes should have looked a little bit more impressive. So yeah, the plus money is enticing for someone that's as hot as Lopes is right now, but it's Volk, and I'm not ready to sell off either, man. We're still riding the Volk train, I think.
Yeah, I think we got to ride it for a little bit longer. And I think the main event is one of those fights where I'm okay with making my wager a little bit smaller because I want this to be an absolute banger. I want this. If there's a knockout, I don't want it to be until the 5th round. I want it to be one of those fights that we remember because it's not often where a title is decided by a vacated belt, right? This is two guys basically starting at scratch for their chance to have their hand raised and the belt wrapped around their waist. There's no better scenario we could ask for. So I want it to be an absolute banger. So I'm not going to go super heavy on it, but you got to just pick the guy who's been there before, the guy who has the massive fight IQ. He fought. It's like 3 of his last losses were against 2 of the best fighters in the entire world.
Brad, tell us a little bit about how to follow your content on Fight Night. Like you said, you'll be there in Miami following along. Give us the plug, man. Yeah,
so first and foremost, I'll have a deeper breakdown of this fight on NBC sports.com. But you can follow me on X at Mr. Brad Thomas. I will be doing a live blog. I will have every single fight I will have covered. I might miss 1 or 2 if I'm doing any interviews, but I will still try to get a bet out. And that will be a live blog. It'll be attached and pinned to my X account at Mr. Brad Thomas.
Brad, thank you so much as always. Looking forward to following along with you and all the action in Miami. That'll do it for us today, guys. Thanks for following along. Thanks for hearing our bets, our interviews. For more UFC fight sports action, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel. Until then, we'll catch you next time. Enjoy the fights.